been asked today to share my third born child, I'll call it. No, this is definitely a labor of love and something that's been a long time in the works, and we're really excited now that it's public and shareable. Um, so as Jacob said, I work at Amazon. I'm on the sustainable buildings team within Worldwide Sustainability. We are sort of a central strategy and governance organization across all of Amazon's building verticals. So I work very closely. Sorry, I said Jacob, didn't I, Justin? Losing my mind. Not getting enough sleep. Uh, Anywho, working with commercial office, grocery, logistics fulfillment, data centers, all the good things. So when we talk about mass timber buildings, all of us that have been in that space for a while, we inevitably end up in a discussion about sourcing, and what does it mean to source good wood. There's a lot of opinions in this space, a lot of perspectives, all valuable. And I think certainly as buildings professionals, we are not foresters typically. Uh, there are certainly those amongst us who have forestry degrees and have gone very deep down the rabbit holes of this work. But for most of us, that's just not what we do or what we should do. So this resource, which is now available on the Amazon Sustainability Exchange, which is a free and publicly available website with lots of good resources on it, um, is an attempt to develop a very robust definition of what good looks like for forestry practices in North America. Um, it's nuanced, it's detailed, it's several hundred pages, but I'm going to walk you through it today so you understand why it's not daunting. You don't have to read every page of it, and where this resource could perhaps help you in your pursuit of better mass timber buildings, or even help answer questions around what do I do if there's not enough FSC wood available? What do I do if I'm sourcing from a federal forest that can't certify? So this is not meant to be a competitive framework to certifications. We recognize the value of third-party certifications, but certainly as we're all trying to do a better job of tracking the source of the wood that's going into particularly mass timber buildings, um, we just need to know, like, what are we even procuring for? Why are we asking for this transparency? What kind of practices are we trying to drive on the ground? So I'm really, really going to walk you through this because it's a little bit hard to find. But this is the Amazon Sustainability Exchange. Let's see, I can drop that in the chat if I can find where my screen went. There it is. Doo-doo-doo-doo. So that's the link to the general resource, which lands you on this page. We have different focus areas, buildings, carbon-free energy, etc. Within carbon neutralization, I think this one's interesting too. We now offer a carbon credit service. So we have a we have an entire team of people who work on carbon neutralization and sourcing sort of the highest quality carbon credits in the market. Our quality bar is so high that one, ILFI, for our zero carbon certifications, has approved our quality metric as exceeding their standard. And the great majority of voluntary carbon credits in the market don't meet our standard. So this is a really cool service now that we're offering kind of to the industry because we know everybody has this problem is trying to source high quality carbon credits, but they don't necessarily have the resources that we do to fund an entire team to kind of manage this research and do the deep dives necessary to ensure these credits are durable and additional and all of the really important things that we need quality carbon credits to be. Anyway, point being, we're digging into buildings here. This is meant to be truly a sustainability exchange. So you'll see a lot of resources on here that were not generated by Amazon. The AGC's playbook is up here. That was co-developed by Skanska and Ryan Companies, a bunch of great general contractors. There's a case study by Seneca. There's a playbook by Arup. So if you have really great resources that you want to share with the industry too around our decarbonization journey in particular, send them our way. We certainly are happy to look at them and share them if they sort of meet our kind of internal guardrails. And by getting them up here on the exchange, we also sort of support them with marketing and case studies and LinkedIn posts so we can sort of access or spread that message throughout our network. Anywho, scroll down here, you can see our playbook and other things, but under additional resources, that's where you'll find this resource, the regional criteria for sustainable wood sourcing, North American mass timber. We're being very specific because this study was very focused on North America. very focused on the forests that serve our mass timber markets in particular. So we didn't map every forest in North America, but the primary ones that are serving directly to mass timber end products. We're not yet able to map the entire dimensional lumber commodity market of North America, even with our resources. So we had to kind of bite off the piece that we could actually chew. So when you click on this link, I'm not going to do it because it takes a little hot second to load because it is 229 pages long. But this is the resource. And if you go to the table of contents, I think this really kind of spells out what's in here and perhaps what's not. So there's an introduction that talks about what this research about, why we undertook it, what our guiding principles were, and what the research methods were, which I think is really important to understand. Again, what we're trying to do here, what we're not trying to do here. And when I say we, I want to jump back really quickly to the contributors because this was not Amazon saying what good forestry is. We hired the smartest people we could find in each of these specific regions who know the most about their regions to basically give us their knowledge, right? To codify their knowledge as to what good forestry practices should be. And they went even beyond that. They gave us good, better, and best. So we have a spectrum of practices because, as you can imagine, forestry is not binary. It's not either like good or bad and you're done. So Blackbriar Environmental in the Southeast, that is Pat Layton's private consulting arm. So if you're familiar with Pat out of Clemson, we had Pat on this project. Northeast Forestry Foundation, Jen Shaken. Skanska was a participant in this project, which was really great to have a general contractor partner to engage with manufacturers, and Sustainable Northwest doing the great work they do sort of in our area of the world, all coordinated by ZGF, obviously leveraging their incredible deep expertise from the PDX airport and some of their other mass timber projects. So I call these people my Avenger Squad because I don't have to be the superhero. I let them be the superheroes. I just had to get them all in the room. So the table of contents really is divided up into 9 timber sheds. Forestry practices are very specific to that ecosystem. So you can't just sort of blanket say these are the right forestry practices or these are the things we want to incentivize across North America, because the state of southern yellow pine forests in the southeast is completely different from East boreal forests in East Canada, is very different from, of course, our Doug fir primary forests in the Pacific Northwest. So you have to take each one of these things as sort of its own ecosystem. Um, so that's what you see here is how these were divided into those sort of sub-regions by ecosystem. And also in the appendices, there was a deep dive into actually the state regulatory practices. So every one of the states that are kind of touched on in this framework also have their own laws and regulations that they're driving, and those all land in different places on the spectrum as well. So we really wanted to sort of have these two sources together. One saying, what do we think is best for this ecosystem from an ecological health and resilience perspective? And what does the law say in terms of what the state regulatory practices might be? Um, and you can see there was a much deeper dive on Southern Pine Forest because there's just so much history there that I think you need to be aware of to really understand the current state of the Southeast forestry world, really. So each one of these you can dive in wherever you want, right? So if you're building a project west of the Cascades and you want to source wood west of the Cascades, you really only need this section here. So it's about 10 pages. So that's what I say about like, you don't need to read all 230 pages for every project. Feel free. I think it's awesome. Like totally nerd out about forestry. But how it's set up is you see this sort of regional divide. That's how we had our different sub-consultants, dividing up the team. You see the guiding principles. I'll let you dig into that when you want to. It even has a bit of a implementation roadmap. So how do you start to leverage this guidance in your procurement practices? We didn't publish that because that's sort of, our own special sauce, and everybody has their own way of doing this. But certainly, if you're trying to map a procurement process, you have to know what you're mapping to, and that's what this guide is really trying to provide is a definition. So these are the different timber sheds, what we call them, because wood basket already has its own meaning. So kind of develop this word timber shed to indicate where these ecosystems are and are not. So if you're trying to source some wood from, I guess, North Dakota, we don't have you covered there. Sorry, it's not a huge market for softwoods for mass timber today. But I know there's a lot of expansion in California happening right now, which is really exciting. So maybe version 2 of this guide, we need to add California. Um, so in the guide, you'll see this is sort of the state summary, what that looks like. But I think what's really exciting that I want to talk about too is how this was set up. It's not only just pages of actual content that explains what these forestry practices are, but it also gives you this gradient. And on the left are the different forest management practices, harvest management practices. And on the top is sort of a value scale. So on one side, we're really sort of financially optimized, right? That's what markets demand. And on the right is typically ecologically optimized. Those things can be in conflict. Sometimes they dovetail. Most of the time they don't. Otherwise, we'd already be doing all the good things. And you see sort of goes from on the left side, good to better to best on the right. And so for each of these timber sheds, this framework was assessed based on what the needs were. And then there was actually, you see in this lower left corner, evaluated for what the practices currently are in those places on that spectrum, both for ecological health and resilience, but also for climate smart. We did separate those spectrums into two because certain practices may be short-term detrimental to carbon storage goals, but very beneficial for ecological health and resilience in the long term or in the short term, right? So when you think about timescales, if you're thinking long term, the practices you implement today are good for both ecological health and resilience and climate. But we often have to make sort of trade-offs in the short term. So that's why we wanted to keep those spectrums separate. You can see here again a sourcing framework that might be helpful, some more guidance, and then some limitations. So how to pick a scale by which to measure this. So I think those are some good caveats to look at. But I just want to jump in really quickly to show you this example before my time is up. So you can see here West Cascades, where we're most familiar with, certainly in Seattle. And for any visitors on the call, I know we often get folks that aren't in Seattle or in the Seattle market. Welcome, welcome to the Pacific Northwest. So you can see here how we've established good, better, best practices. And the idea here is moving everybody toward the right. And if we can do that through our market demand signals, through our mass timber projects, it's a win for everybody. It's a win for the forest. It's a win for our projects. It's a win for the climate. And then you see climate smart here. So in some cases, the practices aren't really related to climate smart end goal, and that's fine. They don't have to be. But again, you can see how sort of good, better, best tracks through this framework. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to share for now. I leave the resources to you guys. Dig into it, give us feedback. We want to know if you're using it, how you're using it, what's gone well, what's gone terribly. If you've gotten, connections with someone else in the industry, like foresters who are like, this is bonkers nuts, you got something really wrong here. We absolutely want to hear that. And if they're like, yes, you nailed it, this is really great, we also want to hear that. We want all the feedback because this is not the end of the journey. This is certainly the beginning. So thank you very much.